What's up? I do want to talk to y'all. First, I want to give praise to the Heavenly Father, Most High. He's blessed me. He's given me everything I need up until this point. Still nurturing me and helping me grow to be all that I desire to be, as well as I am already who I need to be. I just need to actually make the move, so that's what I'm doing. But I want to share with y'all some stuff. I have a more extended version of this, in my opinion, on this on YouTube. Brie Mac and Cheese, aka India Debbie. It's December 26, 2019. Kind of chilly, but okay. So basically, as y'all know, this year I've been doing, or maybe you don't know, I've been doing a self journey for my channel, Self Journeys. And pretty much this year I took the time to first have my own journey in order to understand my own platform. I just want there to be a community of people who know that they can share their own experiences with one another, because I'm a person that's of unity. And the first thing I want to share with what I've learned so far is that we have there's a lot of different people in the world, okay? So we have, I'm going to just talk right now about empathy and narcissism, or labeling of a person, as they would say, a narcissist versus an empath. I've learned this year that I've carried traits of both, and it stemmed from my upbringing. As a child, I went through a lot of, things that we all may have experienced bits and pieces of. I went through my first time having a unwilling sexual experience. It was of a woman, an adult woman, when I was in the elementary school, in primary elementary school. And after that, I was fondled plenty of times by different men, older boys, different people. And I just took the time to realize in middle school and getting out of elementary school that I wanted to not deal with that ever again. And I had to understand why I dealt with so many different things where I was confused about my sexuality. I went through all of that. And I'm not the only person that I know that goes through this but doesn't necessarily want to be, a person who deals with the same sex. That doesn't mean that I'm homophobic or I'm against the LGBT community, because I love everyone. I love all people of different cultures, different denominations, of religions, of, environments, everything. I love all people, and that's always how I've been, because I love to get to know people outside of my own self. And I took a journey years ago where I was learning about my own race, my own culture, my own background, who I am, and who my family is. Even though I was born in America, just learning about my family and about my lineage and about the things that they don't teach you in school about yourself, so I had to learn it through talking to my elders and my parents. And unfortunately my parents didn't know much about it and they didn't care much about it, but I was able to talk to my elders, and I was able to do some different tests and everything to figure out what my lineage and my ancestry is years ago. So now I'm able to, this year I was able to use this self-journey time to really embark on self-judgment, self-evaluation, self-recognition, self-awareness, self-admiration, self-forgiveness. I'm gonna say right now, I've forgiven anybody in my life, but the first thing I had to do was forgive myself for dealing with things I've dealt with, for looking at myself the way I looked at myself, whether it be good, too high of myself or too low. The confusion, the things I accepted to believe, and even for giving myself for hurting other people. And I just would like to say in general that I would like to ask everyone and anyone who I've ever hurt or made feel some kind of way, or I've offended, or who has even done something to me, to forgive me and to forgive themselves for having dealt with my mess. And from there, like I said, I solely wanted to talk about narcissism and empathy right now. My YouTube video is more extended because I was just really venting, but for the sake of this being a short video, so the thing about an empath and a narcissist, I guess definition wise, a narcissist is a person who has excessive interest or admiration of themselves. An empath is someone who has the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. So that being said, to break it down, the similarity that stand out the most about what I understand about having both traits, because I know and understand now that I carried both empath and narcissistic traits in my entire life up until today, and I'm still trying to understand how to unravel the negatives of these things. So the thing that are similar of them is that a narcissist and an empath are very, very high in sensitivity. They're highly sensitive in nature. So that's just how they are. They can't help being very sensitive people. And with that being said, the main differences are that they're actually opposites. So an empath is more sensitive about the whole world, you know, and a narcissist is typically more sensitive for themselves, which, to elaborate, a narcissist doesn't really have much empathy because they are so focused on self-growth, self-gain, which is nothing wrong with either one of these things that I'm speaking on. It's not meant to offend anyone. It's to bring awareness to, I guess, terminology and things that we may not know are considered labels, but it's like a mental, for me, it became a human psychology study of experiential studies of my own personal experiences, as well as understanding mental health issues in the world. And a narcissist can have a grandiose attitude and is typically someone who takes on leadership roles and has a lot of like credibility and a lot of people who typically might look up to them, you know, because they have these roles, they don't half the time realize that they may fall out of tune with wanting to help other people because they're so much focused on how those people are viewing them, and which is why, you know, it's more like they're sensitive for themselves, their own image, their own existence, their own progress, their own feelings, their own emotions themselves. I don't see anything wrong with that. However, they have a very hard time once they do find very good establishment and stability within themselves with giving and pouring out empathy or even sympathy of others. They're more prone to being sympathetic to people if they see someone going through something, going through a hardship, but they don't have empathy. And just so you're clear on the differences between the sympathy and the empathy, the difference between sympathy and empathy, they are synonyms of each other, but they share, the sympathy is sharing feelings of another. So sharing feelings of another and being relatable and like having pity or sorrow for someone's misfortune. And empathy is understanding the feelings of another, like actually relating from not just necessarily an experience, but putting yourself in people's shoes when they're telling you something. That's the difference, because having sympathy for someone is like, oh, he's homeless, okay, well, that's sad. Empathy is like, dang, I know for a fact, I'm thankful for the fact that I have somewhere to go to, whether or not I don't have no heat. I got a building to go to. So, typically an empathetic person is someone who always gives their last to people that they see struggling, simply because they put themselves in everyone's shoes because they try to understand it, even if that's not their situation. Now, a narcissistic person typically just wants to, express that they understand, if they even care or have any bit of sympathy at all, but they typically don't have empathy, and that's just the way it goes. Now, for an empath, I want to speak heavily on the empaths because the thing about an empath, you need to recognize whether or not you carry both of these traits. And I personally believe that in this generation, in this world right now, majority of millennials and baby boomers have both traits. And that's because genetics has cross-wired so many of the genes of our ancestors that it's to the point where we share both types of feelings and many different types of feelings. I know for me personally, because of my life path, I continuously juggled with my emotions. And the thing about an empath, they, as opposed to a narcissist who can recognize someone's pains, it's all energy. So an empath can actually feel the person's pain if they're not even around them sometimes. And for me personally, I was in an environment this past year that I was around people that I loved and wanted to love. I was married to someone who I loved dearly and who I thought would be able to feed into me the way I wanted to feed into him, and I just wanted to grow with him. And this is not the first relationship I've had in my life, but I only consider 3 relationships in my life. The first one, I was in a domestic violence relationship with that person. I've forgiven him. I've moved on. There's no hate in my heart against this person, because I understand inner childhood wounds, and I understand that we go through things mentally based on our environment as a child, growing up, as you know, ancestral patterns, genetic cycles and curses, things that need to be broken down to our own understanding in order to grow from it. So the second relationship, I lost a very good person because I didn't recognize how that he was so different, that I just was like, oh my goodness, like this is way too much love for me. And I didn't understand men that way, simply because of my upbringing. My father was a wonderful person. He bought me things. He took care of me in a materialistic way. I had a home that was in nice places. Even though I was raised Navy, I was not around him as much, but I had, you know, my mother, she worked a lot as well. But my parents, they materialistically and physically and fleshly took care of me and my siblings. A1, perfection when it comes to organization and stability. Now, when it comes to the emotional side of it, the love factor, that is where the disconnect was for me. And so growing up, I was a free spirit, and I was different from my parents, who are Virgo and a Taurus. They were very grounded. They didn't really care for me being outside playing, doing stuff, having friends was a thing my father was not for. He was all about circles, small relationships, not fooling with people, and keeping his kids all in the house because he didn't trust the world, especially because he was in the Navy and he couldn't always be there. So I understand my father, even though he drank alcohol to suppress sometimes the things that he had inside of himself, he always came off as a very strong person and someone who loved as best as he could and as best as he knew how. And my mother, the same, you know. And my parents, you know, they met at a young age. They both worked for the government, and they both built, you know, from being from Baltimore City, they made sure that, you know, even though as their first child, I had, you know, been in the city a lot as a young child, but then I was moving around a lot and as a Navy brat. And then when I was kicked out at 17, I was able to establish myself in Atlanta, and that's where I say you know, I was made. That's why I say when people ask, oh, I'm a Baltimore baby, you know, Navy brat, that's how I was raised. And then I was made in Atlanta, because that's where that's the first place I ever was able to establish myself, grow, learn, and really learn how to be I was able to live, have fun as a child, as well as just have so many lessons that I learned about life in Atlanta. So when I moved back to Maryland and I met my husband, it was like I had met someone who I had felt fun around again. And you know, I had that same factor of family that I had with that first boyfriend I had before, where it was just like we just enjoyed each other's time. You know, we understood each other in the beginning. The first year was like the best thing ever. We traveled, spent endless money. I helped him get himself established in the physical, and he helped me get my spirit right. And that's just how it was with my husband. And I just still to this day love him. But I understand that this particular journey was for us to break down the things that we repeated, the patterns we repeated, the cycles. And I pretty much had to recognize what had went down in this marriage, because I wanted to be perfect, and I wanted to be the best wife I could be, and the best sister-in-law, the best sister, the best daughter-in-law, the best daughter, the best granddaughter, the best friend, the best associate, the best worker. And, you know, I'm not saying I wanted to be perfect, but I kind of was working towards trying to be perfect. And all in all, I was juggling grandiosity, because I was in the military trying to become second lieutenant, trying to, you know, be the top of the game or whatever. But I had also appreciated my enlistment part and being just a private and just being a sergeant and just being able to actually lead but smaller portions of people and devise things and execute rather than plan. And so this year's lessons definitely taught me a lot. This video gonna cut off on me, so I'm actually gonna do a part 2 and talk more about empaths and elaborate more on my own understanding from my experiential studies.